Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Greg with SportsRehabExpert.com and On Track Physiotherapy, and today we're going to be discussing 3 rotator cuff exercises that I like to use to help keep the shoulder feeling healthy and keep the shoulder feeling mobile. So we're going to be going over 3 exercises. We're also going to give you 3 more advanced exercises because we're going to start with a little bit more of a basic version. So in total, you're going to be getting 6 exercises today. But before we get into those, I want to also dispel a couple myths. And one of those myths is that a lot of people feel that they don't necessarily need to train the rotator cuff when they're doing other exercises in the gym, because say they're doing some type of pressing movement or a push-up or a row. The rotator cuff is being active and working during those exercises, which it is 100%, but it's not an exercise that is geared towards directly firing the rotator cuff. So these EMG studies that teach us, what muscles fire the most are useful from a hypertrophy standpoint to train hypertrophy, which is necessary to keep hypertrophy within a particular set of muscle groups so that we have tissue resiliency. And that tissue resiliency is very important to help withstand potential injuries down the road. So we still need to train the rotator cuff in kind of like a bodybuilder type fashion to help build resiliency about the shoulder. And then certainly you don't want to discontinue everything that you're already doing at the gym and more of, say, the functional training that you may already be doing too, that relates to everyday movement. So just keep that in mind as you're working out. So let's get into those exercises now. All right, so the first exercise that you'll see me do is just simple shoulder external rotation and sideline. So it's a common one that people do, but a lot of people will butcher the exercise and do it wrong, and we want to make sure that we're doing the exercise appropriately so that you get the most benefit out of the activity. So first thing I see people do wrong is that they'll kind of get up on their side and do this, or when they lay down, the shoulders, again, they're not stacked, and the shoulder is depressed as they do this exercise. And what that does is it's going to kick on the lat, because the lat is a shoulder depressor and internal rotator. So if you're depressing that shoulder down, you're going to kick on that lat muscle a little bit more, which again, the lat is an internal rotator. We're trying to create external rotation here. So the lat is the exact opposite muscle that we want to be active. We're training the infraspinatus and the teres with this particular exercise of shoulder external rotation. So we want to make sure that the lat does not kick on. Number 2 is I like using a half foam roll for this at the gym because it's readily available at most gyms, just putting something between the elbow, but you can also use a folded up towel roll for the same thing. And the importance of this is there's been plenty of studies that show that you get more infraspinatus and teres muscle activation when you do have something spacing out the elbow from the side just a little bit and allowing the elbow to rest on something versus nothing at all. So we want to try to maximize the benefit of the exercise. So putting something to space the elbow out a little bit is very helpful for that. Where I see people go wrong is they'll put the spacer too low, which again facilitates this down shoulder action, which will again kick on the lat, which we don't want. So I make sure that when we use this, we stick it up high in the armpit so we avoid that. Thirdly, I don't want to see anybody cranking down hard on this because again, that would be likely to kick on the lat, which we're trying to avoid in total here. So just lightly resting the elbow as you perform the activity, and then you'll grab the weight and perform the desired number of repetitions, which I usually keep between 10 to 15 reps total. So you use a weight appropriately that allows you to complete that rep range, but still challenge you at the same time. When you're doing this exercise, you should rotate about the shoulder joint, but you should not see the shoulder roll forward or roll back with the movement. And the elbow stays at 90 degrees. You don't flex the elbow or extend the elbow as you rotate. So it stays at 90 degrees and you rotate about that shoulder access point. Finally, you should also notice that you feel a muscle burn in the back side of the shoulder and lateral side of the shoulder. If you feel anything in the front side of the shoulder, that's not what we're trying to accomplish with this. It's not the muscle that we're shooting for. So you may be doing it wrong, the technique may be wrong, or you might not be ready for this particular exercise at this point in time. So the advancement to that exercise is going to be a rotator cuff burnout set. Now, again, as I mentioned before, we're going to stick to the 10 to 15 rep ranges with the shoulder external rotation exercise. That's going to be the first exercise of this burnout set. We're going to do 2 total. So I'm still sticking within that 10 to 15 rep range. Now, at some point in time, that's going to get pretty easy for you. So again, feel free to progress the weight to something that is challenging. But sometimes we need to get more reps in to make it challenging too. So if 10 to 15 is feeling pretty easy, then we're going to finish those 10 to 15 reps and then go right into a side raise. For the side raise, you're going to keep the elbow straight, raise up to 90 degrees so that my knuckles are pointing right towards the ceiling, and then control the weight down nice and slow. And perform this until fatigued, where I'm burnt out and I can't do another rep, or close to it depending on your symptoms. Again, with this exercise, we're stopping vertical knuckles towards the ceiling. We're not letting the shoulder roll way back. We're stopping right up at 90 degrees. And then when we go down, controlling it, but we are crossing midline, and then we're returning all the way back up. If you do have discomfort through any of those ranges, you can, again, modify the range of motion to where maybe you don't go down quite as far and then come back up, but should be able to, in the ideal scenarios, that we go through a full range of motion, keeping constant tension on the muscle. Again, you should feel this in the back side of the shoulder, shouldn't feel this in the front side or get any type of pinching or pain sensations with this movement. So the next exercise is a dumbbell front raise in the scapular plane with the thumbs up. So this exercise has been shown through a lot of research to be the #1 exercise to get the supraspinatus active. Again, the purpose of this is we want to try to build hypertrophy in the muscle to build shoulder and tissue resiliency. Again, there's other things you can do to try to work on function of the shoulder and things that are more specific to the task, but we also need to build shoulder resiliency and tissue resiliency through exercises that have been shown to have a high amount of EMG activity in those particular muscle groups. So this one's working the supraspinatus, and things that I see wrong with this exercise is people performing too narrow or with the thumbs down. We definitely don't want to do it with the thumbs down because that puts us into an impingement scenario. The purpose of doing this is in 𝐋𝐄𝐓, which is this 45-degree plane of movement, is that it puts the ball and socket in the most optimal position to create optimal congruency of the ball rolling inside the socket and clearing space so that we're not putting too much pressure on some of the muscles. So that's why we're doing it with thumbs up and at a 45-degree angle. You're stopping just above 90 degrees. There's no need to go all the way up with this exercise. We're stopping just at 90 degrees, and we're trying to strengthen that supraspinatus at a little bit over that 90-degree point, and then work on that eccentric control on the way down. Again, the set in rep ranges for this exercise is going to be about 3 sets from 10 to 15 with the reps. So pick a weight that is appropriate with that. Something I see people in general performing wrong is that they'll use the same weight or the same resistance for every single exercise that they do for the rotator cuff. And just keep in mind, we're working different muscles of the rotator cuff too. So it's no different than different variations of a bench press or any type of bicep curl variation. Certain variations are harder than others, and certain variations are easier than others. So we need to make sure we still challenge you. So you have to pick a weight that is still challenging. Don't make it a very simple activity. So the #1 way to progress this is to actually progress up in weight instead of staying so low. So if you can easily perform 15 reps, you probably need to get a little bit higher in the amount of load that you use with that exercise. Now, the way to progress this activity is to get a band and put it around your wrist. This band needs to be pretty light. So the #1 mistake that I see with people doing this is they'll try to get a really heavy band, and then they can only kind of press out about so far. Again, remember, we're trying to do this in the scapular plane, which needs to be at about a 45-degree angle. So we need to be able to really be able to push out into that band and get at that same angle. If you can't get at that 45-degree angle, you need to go with a lighter band. So I would err on the side of having a lighter band or a little bit wider band that allows you to push out and just gain a little bit of that. Again, that's abduction, horizontal abduction, and external rotation that we're now resisting with the band kind of pushing across. So we're getting a little bit of that infraspinatus and teres with the supraspinatus, adding a band around the wrist. So biggest mistake that I see people make there again is having too thin of a band or too small of a band that doesn't stretch out far enough, or the band is too heavy and they can't push out into the weights. So with the weights in hand, again, this is what it looks like right here with the thumbs pointing up, and we're going just above 90 degrees and then controlling the lowering back down, and we're making sure that we keep the arms out at that 45-degree angle. Perform for same number of sets and reps with that. Now lastly, I just want to talk about, because a lot of people might get some clicking or thumping or clunking with this exercise. So a couple things that I found helpful with that is to remember to keep the sternum up proud with that. So we want to make sure our sternum is up proud and we're not slouched, so the sternum is pointing down to the ground. So putting the sternum up proud helps tilt the scapula backwards. And then from there, because we're raising our arms up overhead, we want to think that our shoulder blades are going to move around the thorax and upwardly rotate as the arms raise up overhead. So it's that sternum up position, and then as we reach long through the arms, we kind of think about lifting the shoulder blade and allowing the shoulder blades to kind of rotate and spread apart as we raise up. And as you do that, you should notice that there's a lot less clicking and clunking going on. If you do get some, again, as long as it's not painful, it's not too big of a deal to worry about, but we do want to be mindful of it as well. So the final variation is a diagonal movement. The nice thing about this movement is it works all of these muscles together as opposed to focusing on one. You get to emphasize all the muscles at once in this diagonal reaching across the body type of a movement. Now the first variation of this, or the easiest variation of this, is to actually just press up and then lower the weight down or the resistance down. Again, choose a band that gives you the appropriate resistance. The thing about a band that you have to be mindful of is that top position is going to be the highest point of resistance because you're pulling that band taut, and the bottom part is going to be the lowest part of resistance. So just keep that in mind, that we need to go through a full range of motion, and it should go without saying that you should be able to get your arm up overhead comfortably if you're going to be doing this exercise as well too. Now we're going to start with a couple nitpicky things with this exercise. The band is down, and I'm stepping on the band. That's what's anchoring the band to the ground, but I'm going to put my opposite leg forward. So if I'm working my right hand, my left leg is going to be forward, and that puts us in a stance that's similar to walking. So when we're walking, we go opposite arm, opposite leg, and we're going to allow the zipper of our pants or our hips to kind of rotate towards that stance leg. And then what's going to happen is we're going to counter rotate back with our upper arm as we go through that movement. So that's the movement right there. We want to make sure that we keep our rib cage down, but just like the last exercise, we want to make sure our sternum is up proud. We're not slouched over like this, but we don't want to let our rib cage flare up and arch our back like that either. So the setup is opposite leg forward, hips turn slightly towards that leg to put us into that stance phase of the gait cycle. And then you're going to keep your sternum up proud, but lower rib cage down and abs engaged. And then the easiest version again is just to press up overhead, and then as you rotate down, the thumb will rotate down towards your thigh, and then again press up overhead and rotate down towards your thigh. And why this is easier is again just due to the lever arms. The longer we keep the lever arms, so right here is the advancement of it, the harder it's going to be. If we shorten the lever arm, it's going to be a lot easier to get to that top point, and then we can lower nice and slowly to try to work our strength through that range of motion. It's no different than holding a gallon of milk out. Holding a gallon of milk out here is a lot harder than it is holding it in here. So if we can't go through that full range of motion just yet, we're going to shorten the lever arm, press up overhead, and then control the weight down as you lower the thumb down. Again, eventually what we're trying to get towards is this full smooth movement where hips turn towards this stance leg, counter rotating back with the upper body, sternum is up proud, lower rib cage is down. I'm not arching my back to lift the band. I'm just using my arm to control the band back and forth.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you found yourself wondering how we can help you more, visit us at sportsrehabexpert.com, where we have more free content, products, and courses that you can take to accelerate your learning. Or you can just send me an email at greg@sportsrehabexpert.com. And one more thing, if you found this video helpful, please subscribe so you get notified whenever a new video comes out. And please like and share any content that you feel was helpful. Thanks.